Nick, how are you doing today?
I am doing outstanding. How are you doing, Amy?
I am really good. I want to talk to you today about soft power. I particularly want to start focusing initially on the Olympics going on right now in Italy. If you can just kind of give us a little bit of history of soft power, what it does, why the Olympics are important into power projection in nations.
Yeah, absolutely, and a very sportive Sunday to you too. So the Olympic Games, the modern Olympic Games, started out as an effort to try to bridge international disputes, try to create international cooperation, and that is the spirit with which they're propagated. However, most countries approach them through a lens of soft power. They want to get something out of them. Now, frequently they'll get some sort of minor tourism boost, although that if they're able to recoup the costs of the construction for all the new venues, they're fortunate. But what they really get out of them is the opportunity to project themselves in a global stage and saying, hey, all the people around the world, our country is one that's worth partnering with and worth building relationships with, and you can trust us. So if your country, if you're, say, Italy, and you're trying to do trade deals with African or South American countries, South Americans and Africans are going to say, hey, I recognize Italy. I have positive ideas about Italy. So I'm okay with my government going ahead and partnering with them for trade or for whatever other international cooperative agreements. The converse is also true, and we saw that when Putin did his Winter Olympics in Sochi, immediately he turned around and annexed Croatia, or Crimea rather. I'm sorry, not Croatia, Crimea. And they said all of that goodwill that he built up was immediately thrown away. It's like, okay, we don't want to partner with Russia anymore, despite all the effort they put in to make themselves look good. A few years later, when he in 2022, as he's building up to invade Ukraine, we are almost certain that Xi made a deal with him. Do not invade Ukraine until after my Olympics are done, because I want to create this positive air. So for the countries that are putting this on, it's really important to create that positive perception across the globe, so they can create some sort of fond memories, fond thoughts for when their populace wants to influence policy on how we engage with the world.
And thanks a lot for that, Nick. And here on Cocktails and Current Events, our very inaugural episode a few weeks ago, we discussed Greenland and what was going on over there, particularly, in relationship with NATO countries, etc. I really kind of want to tie this back. There's been some statements made by some Olympians who are competing from Greenland, who are represented, of course, under Denmark, which is their parent nation, which is the way they have that set up. But during the Olympics initial kickoff, the IOC has confirmed that J.D. Vance, who was there with an entourage, including ICE agents, was booed. And I know there's a lot of nuances to this. And so I'd love for you to just kind of unpack this a little bit for the audience.
Yeah. So when these things happen, it's, again, you're trying to create a positive impression for your country. So world leaders attending these events is a really big deal. More importantly, when world leaders don't attend these events, it's a really big deal. So Trump himself decided not to go, probably because he knew he was going to get booed. He sent J.D. Vance in his stead, who absolutely was booed. The portion with ICE is a bit of a it's kind of making a mountain out of a molehill, if I may. This is a long-standing issue or long-standing tradition. ICE, along with the FBI and other law enforcement agencies, always work together to make sure there aren't any terrorist threats against the American contingent. That really is, it's bad optics that ICE is part of this, but it's not part of J.D. Vance's entourage. It's not something special that the Trump administration was doing. It's standard U.S. procedure to make sure that the U.S. delegation is well protected when they're engaging, wherever they are, not just during the Olympics, but during any sort of international engagement. J.D. Vance probably was not terribly thrilled with his reception, and I don't think he's made much public appearance since then, probably because he's aware that he's not welcome by the populace there in Italy.
And do you think this is related back to the event in Greenland with NATO and Davos?
I think it definitely that's part of it, but it's certainly not all of it. Both Vance and the Secretary of Defense Hegseth have made very pointed comments about how Russia contorts itself, and they've lectured or not Russia, I'm sorry, Europe has contorted itself, and they've lectured Europe persistently about how they don't feel that Europe is carrying their weight or behaving the way that the Trump administration thinks they should. So this is more popular perception again by the part of Europeans as a whole on the Trump administration as a whole. It's not specific to the Greenland. That certainly didn't help the situation, but it's Trump policy writ large.
And definitely tying back to that national security strategy that we talked about, and how the Europeans are focused in a very different way in this national security strategy than what we've seen since World War II.
Yeah. So the national security strategy has definitely pushed, and Trump was pushed this in his first term as well, to try to get Europe to take up more of the slack, to try to. It is a valid criticism. Throughout most of the Cold War, and particularly after the Cold War, the United States has shouldered most of the security burden for the Western world, and that includes most of the NATO countries in Europe. They let their defense expenditures slack. Now, saying that they don't fund NATO is a misnomer. That's not how NATO works. What the complaint is that they don't fund their national militaries to an extent that they could defend themselves. They are absolutely reliant on the United States to defend them. So there's a genuine concern there, and a legitimate issue that Europe does need to kind of step up. And they have, particularly the Eastern European nations. Their defense expenditures in the Far East and in the Baltics and in Poland particularly have gone way up. Even Germany and France are increasing their defense expenditures quite a bit. So they're stepping up. It's not necessarily because of U.S. pressure. It's more because they're seeing Russia as a much bigger threat than they did 10, 15 years ago. So they're responding to that, and they're taking measures to make sure that they can be protected. But they're also recognizing that with the current administration, they don't feel like they can count on the United States for providing any sort of protection. They're not as certain that NATO Article 5 is going to actually work the way that it theoretically does.
So, Nick, I want to pursue something that has happened historically, and looking at the fact that we are in truly some unprecedented times with the United States in this administration. Even, in the last Olympics and throughout history, when athletes have competed, there has been almost, I think, at every single Olympics, a time where some of the athletes have defected and sought asylum. Do you think that this is at all a possibility, considering the fact that the president of the United States is directly attacking athletes in his social media posts and telling them that they really shouldn't be representing the country? Are they in any actual real danger? Should they be seeking asylum? And how has this happened historically?
I don't think that any American athletes will seek asylum in other countries. We already have mechanisms that allow for emigration for citizens to look to other places for citizenship if they're not happy with the United States. It's not a case like North Korea or Cuba where we guard our citizens to the extent that we won't expose them to the outside world. And our athletes have been pretty critical of the administration too. Now, I'm not going to sit here and name names, but there are absolutely athletes who have been very vocal, despite representing the United States and being very proud Americans. They're being very critical of the current administration. So I don't think that the Trump administration's pointed comments toward individuals are going to cause them to defect. It may cause them to say, hey, I don't want to represent the United States during the Olympic Games. Maybe I will seek some other avenue to pursue my athletic career.
Great points there, Nick. And now I want to pivot a little bit to the upcoming Summer World Cup, as well as in 2 years, we are going to be hosting the Olympics in the United States. We have significantly changed U.S. policy on immigration, actually saying certain countries cannot attend the United States, and some of them were World Cup holders. There's a lot of interest with people reporting. I think it was over 50,000 people have said that they are not going to be coming now to some of these events. Any perspective on that and how this is going to impact the United States in both the World Cup and the upcoming Olympics in 2 years?
Yeah, it goes back to the soft power. So the United States, this coming summer, the United States is going to be hosting the World Cup along with Canada and Mexico. So it is entirely possible that that Canada and Mexico will see a much higher percentage of foreigners visiting those matches that are held there rather than the ones being held in the United States. There is an absolute concern among foreigners that we may not let them in, or if they do come in, we may arrest them and treat them poorly. So unless the Trump administration does something to assuage those fears, I think that you're going to see a smaller than normal attendance at the World Cup games in the United States. And we've already seen that sort of thing. Like Disney reported a drop in foreign tourism, and it significantly impacted their parks. So I think the same sort of thing is going to happen in the World Cup this summer. 2 years from now, it could be a lot different. So I can't predict that far out for the 2028 games. But it's absolutely going to impact the World Cup this summer.
Thanks a lot for sharing that. And we've definitely seen up along border states, travel just between Canada and the United States has significantly shifted. Major impact on sales. Bizarrely enough, one of the sticks in my mind is Jack Daniels, since we're talking cocktails and current events.
Yeah.
And so Canadians are not buying Jack Daniels, which is kind of a shame, right? So we've talked a lot on this kind of soft power. I think that we've covered it well. For those of you out here in the audience, I'd love to hear what you want to hear more about. Make sure that we're covering those important topics. Please please subscribe, please give us your feedback. But we do want to follow up on something that we talked about last week, and that is Cuba. So I'm going to go ahead to the next slide. We talked about Cuba, and I wanted to highlight that an executive order had come out from President Trump, that executive order specifically saying that there will be sanctions against nations that assisted Cuba. They gave Cuba oil. In addition to that, there's not been any specific demands. The Cuban government is saying they're in talks with the United States, but there's been no specific demand. In the meantime, in Cuba, the rolling blackouts have continued, and they have actually gotten to the point of having to stop bus services. There are people who are living, in suburbs and exurbs outside of the city, like in Havana, where they are sleeping in work or at friends' houses and stuff. They cannot get back and forth outside of the city. This has become very much crisis. They are reporting blackouts of up to 12 hours a day, as well as increasing sanitation conditions and things like that. And Nick, I just kind of wanted to turn it over to you to discuss anything that you see on those issues.
Yeah, so I do want to start out and say this. It really highlights how poorly the Cuban economy and infrastructure has been managed by the communist government. It's really unfortunate for the Cuban people. They had to see this coming. If they didn't, they were absolutely blind. They lost their Soviet sponsorship that really kept them afloat in 1991. And that's 30 years ago now, 35 years ago now. And they haven't really tried to do anything about it. So Venezuela's kept them afloat a bit. China's kept them afloat a bit. What they should have done is realized, hey, we're dependent upon other countries for X, Y, and Z, for power, for example, and tried to build up some sort of renewable infrastructure. They didn't. So here we are. They are absolutely reliant on foreign inputs for their energy infrastructure. And we are putting the clamps on that. With the Trump administration, through that executive order you mentioned, has claimed that there's a national security threat from Cuba. I don't personally see it, but they are privy to more information than I am. So for whatever reason, they've decided that Cuba is a national security threat because we have effectively gained veto power over the Venezuelan oil economy. All of that oil has been cut off. We have pressured Mexico to cut off their oil supplies to Cuba. President Scheinbaum, Dr. President Scheinbaum, I think you made me say last time, has she's decided she's trying to push a humanitarian response. So she's trying to send them some sort of humanitarian aid, and that may include oil in the future. But she's trying to figure out how to do that without alienating the United States to a point that President Trump is going to try to exert economic influence against Mexico, which is a real concern of hers. It still baffles me as exactly what we want to get out of Cuba. Now, the obvious logical answer is we want regime change, but it's still a stretch for me how we're going to get there and what exactly the vision is post this effective blockade. And a blockade is an act of war, but we're not using that word because it's an act of war, and we want to avoid an armed conflict.
Nick, thank you for highlighting all that. And, I just want to highlight, as somebody who is a geography major, is, you can see right there, here's Key West, Cuba, and Cancun. We wanted to make sure we're capturing this relationship, as all of these geographic entities are out there, near touching each other, and what this sort of means for the United States. Nick, we've talked a lot about soft power. We've talked on a lot of things, and it is Super Bowl time. I know a lot of people care about the Super Bowl. I do want to give a shameless plug. It is the 22nd year of the Puppy Bowl. If you have never had a chance to watch the Puppy Bowl, strongly encourage the people. If you are looking for an alternative, it's a very, very strong alternative. And why do I recommend it? If you do have small children where you're like, this music, whoever it is inappropriate because I have like toddlers or something, it's great. If you just are not a big music fan at all, classical music fan, whatever, it is a wonderful opportunity, and it supports homeless dogs. That's really kind of the point I wanted to get to is, go out there, support your homeless dogs, support your shelters, support your humanitarian aid, because we are all humans and interconnected. Nick, I want you to bring it home for our third edition of Cocktails and Current Events on the Book Horror Universe.
Well, thank you so much for joining us, and I'm very much looking forward to the Super Bowl this afternoon or this evening. I'm probably also going to dip into the Puppy Bowl at halftime because I really enjoy watching that as well. So thank you for reminding me.
Yeah, absolutely wonderful time. I know that one of the things that you and I bonded with is your son loved my dog when we first met, and if you guys have not seen my dog, he's absolutely adorable. I'm sure I will get him on an episode sometime soon. We don't know what's going to be on next week because we'll see what the current events are. So between now and next week, Nick and I will plan it. Thank you so much. Please like, please subscribe, and thank you so much.